Good evening, race fans, and welcome back after a little bit of a hiatus to the Attrition Sim Race Campus Oval Series presented by SM Racing Products. Tonight we're here at the beautiful Iowa Speedway to kick off a brand new season of Oval Series competition here in the league. Season number 18 here. It's hard to imagine that the Oval Series has been going along and kicking as hard as it has for as long as it has, but sure enough, we are still running out here for another season of Truck Series competition here this time around. First time the Oval Series has ever been in the NASCAR trucks. Definitely curious to see how it shakes out for these drivers because it's something that's been on the table that we've talked about off and on for a pretty long time now, but this is the first time that these drivers are finally being able to get behind the wheel of these NASCAR truck machines and get out here for the ASRC Oval Series. Our first race of the season, though, going to be here at the Iowa Speedway, opened up back in 2006. Been here 5 times prior to this race here this evening, so this is actually the 6th time ASRC has visited the track. That track fact is not right. What is right, though, there has been no repeat winners in our visits here to the Speedway. The first one was taken home by Carson Nagy, then Tyler McRae, Benjamin Harsty, Brian Sabelski, Garrett Hess, a handful of those drivers here in the field tonight looking to potentially make it the first driver to win this time or win this track multiple times in a row, but still lots of other drivers hoping to get their first trophy here at this track, and lots of rookie drivers here in the field as well making their debuts here with the ASRC Oval Series, so that is very exciting to see. How about we head down trackside, take a look at our starting lineup here this evening. So, starting on the grid here tonight, kind of unsurprising here in that Project Avalon number 12, that's going to be the driver who swept season number 17 in very dominating fashion, winning 10 of the 12 races on the calendar. That's going to be none other than Mr. Garrett Hess, our champion from last season. He's going to be starting off on the pole here tonight. His outside in the Cheesies number 4, that's going to be another one of our longtime drivers here in the league. That's going to be the number 4 of Daniel Sparks, driver out of Calgary, Canada up there. And how about back in third in the SM Racing Products number 15? That's the driver out of Topeka, Kansas. One half of the founding crew behind SM Racing Products. That's going to be none other than Mr. Garrett Streets. Back in fourth in that McConey setup shop number 85. That's going to be multi-time league champion Mr. Brian Sabelski rolling off back there. Then how about back in fifth, that 78 machine of Derek Murphy. Derek has managed to find himself a sponsor after so many races here in the league unsponsored. That 78 machine now running the colors of the Treehouse Brewing Company. Back in sixth in the 188 machine, that's going to be none other than Joshua Rudolph running in the X-Tide entry here this season. Driver out of Medford, Wisconsin, starting off position number 6. How about back in 7th? That's the number 93, Mr. League Administrator of Jason Gardner in the Goodwrench number 93 entry. Followed by the 27 of Mark Kluge back in 8th in the Sargento Cheesy Bites entry. Then back in 9th, we had the 44 of Mark Royce, who might have had some issues with his wrap on that truck. It does not seem to actually be on there. Instead, it's just unsponsored, very bright green, but we'll have to see if that team's able to get the wrap on there for our next week's race. Unfortunately, not quite able to get it out here tonight, but that's the driver out of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, rolling it off position number 9. Then back in 10th, we have one of the other Canadian drivers. That's the 42 of Michael Sparks in the Kool-Aid entry, followed by the 11 CZ Robotics entry of Corey Logan. Then one of our rookie drivers back in 12th in the Save Our Seas Foundation entry. That's going to be Mr. Kevin Alicia. And for the first time in a very long time here in the ASRC Oval Series, I actually have to hit the next button here on our starting grid. For row number 7, we have rookie driver John Atkins in the 712 entry, making their first start here with the league. And to his outside, Joe Preacher in the number 5 Moza Racing entry, also making their first ever start here with the ASRC Oval Series. Very exciting times here in the series, but the green flag is up in the air. We are racing here for the first time in season number 18. And it looks like a pretty good start by both rows of drivers here. The outside line is where Garrett Hess is wanting to run so far here this evening, though. He's going to move his way up there, and things are looking pretty good around the field right now. And I lied. The yellow flag is out. It looks like Mark Kluge is around in that 27 machine. Things were looking pretty good there up until they weren't. Yellow flag on lap 1 for the first race of the season here. Let's take a look back, try and see what all happened here. And look down at that number 27 machine. Behind him is the 42 of Michael Sparks, and just a little bit of a love tap to the rear bumper of that 27 machine, and that's all she wrote to spin her around. Taking another look back here, look down at this. Just the tiniest little tap, and really that's all it took to get the back of that 27 machine upset, but no damage it looks like. He managed to hang on to it. No touching the walls or any other trucks. Might need a new set of tires on there, but otherwise he should be good to go here. We have one other driver that's making the call down to pit lane. That is Garrett Streets in that 15 machine. Everyone else electing to stay out. They are not ready to come down this early on into tonight's event, and that's honestly not super surprising. Of course, following the usual ASRC Oval Series mantra of 100 laps or 100 miles, whichever comes first, with a couple of exceptions here this season. Down for our third to last race, so all the way out at the very end of May, the race at Talladega Superspeedway will be a 150-mile race, and then the championship event at the Five Flags Speedway will also be a 150-lap event. So definitely curious to see how those will play out for these drivers with some of those longer races. Taking a look here at the schedule here this season, this is mostly, with a few exceptions, a lot more short track focused for these trucks than the real world NASCAR truck series is. Of course, we got Iowa, we got Martinsville, tracks that they race at in the real world, Rockingham as well. Gateway is one of the larger tracks on the ski twin, surprisingly to see, along with Rockingham. Then we go to IRP later on in April. Stafford, bound to be an interesting one here in these trucks later in May. But really, all things considered, the only traditional speedway type tracks we have on here is Gateway, Rockingham, Kansas, and Nashville Superspeedway. And of course, we have our one actual proper superspeedway with Talladega, but then it's all short tracks around here for these trucks. And of course, the SRC Oval Series started as a short track league, so a lot of these drivers should be, for the most part, here in their element when it comes to running these shorter tracks. But of course, they've mostly been doing it in the street stocks, in the tour mods, in the late models. Never have they really taken any of the more NASCAR-styled vehicles to a primarily short-track focused schedule. That said, lights are off on the iRacing.com pace truck. It will be a single-file restart here due to how quickly that caution flag came out. Of course, here in the ASRC Oval Series, if there are multiple back-to-back cautions, I think it is 2 green flag laps, I want to say, is the requirement for it. We will go single file just to try and get some green flag racing in, but otherwise, as long as they get those 2 green flag laps in, they will go back to double file restarts. So it's going to be Garrett Hess leading the field to green, Daniel Sparks in second, Brian Zabelski up a spot. He's going to be starting position number 3. Derek Murphy, Jason Gardner, your top 5 here on this restart. The pace truck's off. They're in the restart zone. Let's try this thing once again. Green flag up in the air here at the Iowa Speedway. Very solid start for our front 3 as Garrett Hess immediately starts to pull away there just a little bit, but from back on to about 4th on back, we are seeing everyone fan out 2, sometimes even 3 wide in a couple positions as everyone tries to make a mad dash on these fresh tires while they've got them. You're looking here down at the battle for the 4th position here. Mark Royce down on the bottom with Derek Murphy up high. Brian Sabelski up high in that 85 Missoni setup shop entry. A lot more light on that 85 machine here this season, I feel like. Definitely different design philosophy from the previous Mikoni setup shop entries we've seen this number 85 machine run. Definitely great to see him back out here on the speedway. Was going to try and get a couple more wins last season, but did not quite have much success with how dominant Garrett Hess was. But Sabelski, it's a new clean slate for all these drivers here this season. Sabelski is definitely looking to try and rack up a couple of more wins here this season in these NASCAR trucks. A little bit further back, more cars, or I guess, excuse me, trucks here running 2x2 from 9th all the way back to 14th. Currently looking at the battle here between the 188 of Joshua Rudolph and the 24 of Kevin Alessia, leading this little pack here. Alessia up on the high line in the SRC's Foundation entry. The 188 down on the bottom, that's Joshua Rudolph. And the 15 of Garrett Streets came into tonight's event last minute here, but the caution flag is out once again. And it looks like Michael Sparks is around in that Kool-Aid number 42. Only 10 laps in, and just like that, caution number 2 out on the speedway here this evening. Let's see if we can't take a look back, figure out what exactly happened there. Sparks is already around when we take this zoom back. So how about we go back a little bit further here. You see Sparks in the Kool-Aid entry down on the inside of the 5 machine of Joe Preacher. And oh, looks like Preacher maybe came down there a little bit. We'll try and zoom or rewind a little bit further. We'll put this here in slow motion. Zoom out just a bit, try and get a better view of what's going on here. Preacher up high in that Moza number 5 machine, right behind the 712 entry of John Aikens. And everything looks so far so good for that 5 machine. Heading through, I believe, turns 3 and 4 here, and it just looks like that 5 machine starts to come out from under him. He comes down the speedway and just bam, contact between himself and Michael Sparks. So that is going to be what brings out caution flag number 2. And this time around, it looks like a pretty decent chunk of the field is going to be making the call to come on down pit lane here. We have Corey Logan on their way out of pit lane. Joshua Rudolph, Mark Kluge all electing to come down. Garrett Streets, Michael Sparks also making stops. And it looks like Sparks a little bit slower stop than the rest of the field. So I think we might have seen fuel only out of Logan, Rudolph, and Kluge, and then maybe tires out of Streets and Sparks, but only 10 laps into a 100-lap event. Surely they didn't take tires. So I'm not sure what really the cause for delay there is between those drivers, but it's only a 5-second stop for most of the drivers that came down, but a 14-second stop for Streets and Sparks. We have drivers coming down. We have more drivers making a stop down on pit lane. Joe Preacher making his first lap down here on pit lane. Corey Logan coming back down. Same with Kluge and Streets. Kluge and Streets have both pitted under this caution already, so it looks like they're just trying to take maybe a splash of fuel every time around. See if they can't do a little bit of fuel strategy as Streets, gonna go a little bit too far in his stall. He's gonna have to back it up. That's gonna cost him a bit of time and a bit of track position here as everyone else who pitted gets out pretty well in front of him. Something interesting to see here with Streets too. Again, he is pitting way longer than these other drivers did. Kluge, Preacher, and Logan only 4, 6, and 9-second stops respectively. Streets is still down here 27 seconds in. It's very entirely possible that Streets got a penalty there. Oh, well, actually, we managed to key up with Streets and hear from him. He said that he had to remap the truck's ignition. So I guess the ignition shut off in that truck. Had to open up the control panel, make sure that he has the ability to turn the ignition back on when it gets shut off. Unfortunately, that will bump Streets down a lap from that little bit of tech work down on that truck. But that's just how it goes. Of course, you have your mechanical issues in the real world, and you have your virtual mechanical issues, be they self-inflicted or otherwise, here on the virtual iRacing.com racing platform. That said, though, we've stacked them up 2 by 2. Garrett Hess, Daniel Sparks, your front runners. All of tonight's event will still be your front row. Then it's going to be Gardner and Royce for row number 2, up +4 and +5 respectively. Then row 3, Sabelski and Murphy, 5th and 6th. Pace trucks off. We're going to try this thing once again. Green flag up in the air here at the Iowa Speedway. Drivers rising up through the gears. No signs of wheel spin. That's what we like to see. A pretty clean restart all around. I'll tell you what, the outside line has definitely had better momentum on all of these restarts over the inside line. But Garrett Hess still just able to launch off really well, get up in front of the outside line, because it definitely seems like that is where you want to be. Jason Gardner, he's going to fall back a couple of spots on that initial restart, though. But a clean start. We got a lap in the books. Everyone is out on the field. And it looks like I was mistaken. It looks like Garrett Streets actually is still on the lead lap. He did not lose a lap from those technical repairs that had to be done to that truck. He is still out on the speedway, and he is actually gaining spots here quite rapidly in that 15 machine. Was at the tail end of the field on the restart. As there's contact further behind. Corey Logan is around and in the infield. Green flag is still in the air. Corey brings it down to pit lane as there's a battle for the race lead here. They know there's a truck around. They're worried about the caution flag coming out, so they're sending it for all the marbles here. Sparks down on the bottom. Hess up to the inside. For the time being there, Sparks had the lead for a couple seconds, but it looks like Hess definitely making that outside line work really well for him here this evening. Still, Daniel trying his best to make bottom of the track work for him here. A little bit further back, how about this battle here between Sabelski and Murphy here? This is for the 6th position. And they are running side by side here. Is the field really, honestly, I am starting to get pretty decently spread out here tonight. As we have a driver around again. That's Corey Logan down on the infield grass here again here in that 11 machine. Green flag still out on the speedway, but we will take a real quick look back to see what happened to that Caesar Robotics machine to send them around. And it looks here like a little bit 3 wide and just some contact. I believe that was the 712 that they made contact with. But it did not bring out the caution, so that will find Corey Logan still on the lead lap, but about 12 seconds or so back from the rest of the field right now. And there actually is your race leaders of Garrett Hess and Daniel Sparks right in the mirror of that number 11 machine, just like that. So unless something dramatic happens, we may see our first truck go a lap down here this evening. Of course, crazier things have happened. We are here at the Iowa Speedway. It seems like a big track, but really 0.8 miles is not all that much. And of course, that's 1.3 kilometers for those of you using the metric system out here. With those gosh darn commie units, we can't have no darn metric systems out here in Iowa Cornfield Speedways. Whoa, watch out there. Street's getting big time loose, almost coming up into that 24 Valencia. Manages to hang on to it though. Valencia gonna go down to the bottom of the track, see if he can't make a move stick down there. But not quite able to make it work. He's gonna back off just a little bit. Sends it in deep into turns 3 and 4, but still no luck there as you see that 24, or excuse me, the 11 of Corey Logan. Holding it down to the very bottom of the track, just letting the field go on by now that they're lapped down, not really wanting to get involved in anyone's battles here this evening. You see more of these trucks coming around the field here, side by side for Michael Sparks and Joshua Rudolph. Rudolph trying to make the higher line work here, but I think he had a little bit of a scrape against the outside wall down the back straightaway there, so maybe not quite working out how he's hoping for it to, but you see how much our race leaders have been making the outside line work, so who knows. Definitely, I think especially as the race goes on, we might see the drivers try and run a little bit lower just for the sake of tire wear. But pulling up the track map here, you can see roughly where everyone is running around here on the speedway. Back at the tail end of the field, there is a battle going on here between John Atkins and Joe Preacher here. Last two drivers still on the lead lap for the time being. You can see that 12 machine coming out of turns 3 and 4 right now. So about about a straightaway back between these two drivers battling for the 12th position here and our race leaders. Up the front, Garrett Hess is working up a pretty decent little bit of a lead here in that number 12 machine, running the Project Avalon paint here this season in that number 12 machine. I'll tell you what, it seems like regardless of what sort of paint they put on that truck, it seems to have a whole lot of speed, even when it's not in a truck-shaped form. Of course, back in the mini stocks, had a lot of very solid performance last season. But even giving it a good bit more power and giving it a good bit more weight, Hess still seems to know his way around these tracks without any sort of difficulty. I mean, we've really just not seen a mistake out of that 12 machine all evening. Of course, only 29 laps in the book, so still a long way left to go. Anything could happen here. But for the time being, Hess really seems to be the class of the field here tonight. It's going to be tough to beat that driver. How about Daniel Sparks, though? He is having a very good run right now here this evening in that Cheesy's number 4. At the tail end of the season, last season, in those mini stocks, we saw Daniel Sparks finish back in the 9th position in the championship standings. So running up here all the way up in 2nd, an amazing start for that number 4 machine. But definitely this is going to be a driver to watch throughout the season. I'm very excited to see how things work out for him here in these trucks. And honestly, there's a lot of drivers that maybe didn't have the finishes they were hoping for in the mini stock series that I think we really need to keep an eye on here running in these NASCAR trucks. There was a lot of enthusiasm out of some of these drivers for switching to these machines, and tell you what, some of these drivers are putting on really solid performances here this evening. I mean, Brian Zabelski, who's a driver who's almost always at the front of the field battling out with Garrett Hess, running back in the 6th position right now, so maybe not quite how Sabelski's wanting to go this moment, but that just goes to show that we're having a bit of a mix-up in the drivers you see running up at the front of the field here this evening. Now about just behind him, Garrett Streets in that SM Racing Products number 15 machine. Having a pretty solid evening here as well, running as the last car in the top half of the field, battling it out with that 85 machine of Sabelski. Of course, Streets, one half of the team that put together SM Racing Products together with Jeremy Morrow, who unfortunately not out here tonight, but hopefully we will see him out here running some more in this season. Of course, SM Racing Products, just a couple of guys that were looking on the sim racing equipment market for some gear, decided they didn't really like anything that they saw out there, so they decided, you know what, why not make it ourselves? Sure enough, they started putting it together, and they decided, you know what, that was a good enough time. How about we just start selling what we make? Sure enough, SM Racing Products was born, and now these drivers have been putting together button boxes and all sorts of cool stuff over on their website. And of course, you can see it on the back of that number 15 truck. That is sm-racingproducts.com. Very big thank you to them for being on board as the title sponsor for the ASRC Oval Series for years now, and always coming out and supporting the league, both in the sponsorship perspective and being out here in the field and helping make things all the more competitive here. I mean, 14 drivers is a pretty considerable field to have here. I believe back in the mini stocks we were averaging, call it roughly about 9 drivers, I think is right around where we averaged in the mini stock series. So very good start in these NASCAR trucks here for season number 18. Something interesting to note here, I mean, this is basically all boils down to driver preference here this season on the iRacing.com platform. The manufacturers do not have any functional differences from each other on iRacing, but there's 14 drivers here in this field. 9 of them are running with Chevrolet. Then we've got 3 Fords and only 2 of them gosh darn cheating Toyotas. Very interesting to see. Like I said, the manufacturers here in this series are entirely up to driver preference. There is no mechanical difference between them. It is just how the bodies look. That's something to keep an eye on. Just some curious to see these drivers' preferences and see how the different manufacturers stack up against each other in the overall points championship. Right now, these drivers are absolutely digging it out with each other as we start nearing the halfway point here in today's race. We have Derek Murphy, Brian Zabelski, Garrett Streets, all under an envelope here as they race for 5th on back through 7th. And honestly, they are all starting to gain here on Jason Gardner as well. We zoom it out here just a little bit. You can see Gardner is starting to fall back closer and closer into the clutches of that 78 machine. Only about 0.4 of a second right now, but as they cross the line, the lap times of 24.88 for Gardner, 24.82 for Murphy. We might just see that gap start to close up here between these drivers. Down on the bottom there, that's the 712 machine. That is John Aikens, who has been officially put a lap down here. He's doing the same as Corey Logan, just keeping it down the bottom, trying to stay out of the way. And it looks like Joe Preacher has also been knocked a lap down. So Hess is officially caught up to those 2 drivers. But of course, there are always lucky dogs, so should the caution flag come out, as it stands right now, Joe Preacher would be put back on the lead lap. Still currently looking down at the closest battle on the speedway between Gardner and Murphy, and then Streets and Sabelski here. Gardner definitely starting to fall back here just a little bit. We'll see how they do as they cross the line here. It's going to be 24.98 for that driver. As we do have a driver making the call to come down pit lane. This is Brian Sabelski here, our Makoni setup shop driver. Not sure if this is a scheduled stop here for him or not. As he brings it down into his box, we'll just have to see. It does look like they are servicing this truck, so I suppose this is a scheduled stop here for the number 85 machine. That will be bumping him a lap down here for the time being, but everyone will need to pit at some point here tonight, so that will cycle the field out and should put Sabelski back on the lead lap here. How about this battle for 9th, though? Joshua Rudolph, Kevin Alessia battling it out. Feels like these 2 drivers have been pretty much right neck and neck with each other on pace all race here this evening. That said, last time by, Rudolph was about 0.2 of a second faster than Alessia was. But he's still hanging on there to the best of his ability, trying to catch back up to that 188 machine. Definitely seems to be lunging it a bit further into the corners than Rudolph is. It's starting to fall back here just a bit. Currently running the 10th position, up +2 from where he qualified for Kevin Alessia, -3 for Rudolph. We do have another battle going on up here. Once again, it is going to be Garrett Streets and Derek Murphy duking it out. Gardner has managed to build up a little bit of a gap here, so I'm willing to bet that Murphy might have had a scrape up against the outside wall there or something that we just missed. But Garrett Streets has gotten around him and is building up a bit of a comfortable lead and starting to put the hammer down to catch up to the number 93 of Jason Gardner. As it stands right now, Brian Zabelski is still the only driver to pit here under the green flag. But as the laps tick down, we should see some more drivers start to elect to come down on the pit lane here. I'll tell you what, Garrett Streets running in 5th right now. Down 2 positions from where he qualified, sure, but considering he was sent all the way back to the tail end of the field after having that issue with his ignition, Very impressive to see that 15 machine all the way back up inside of the top 5, getting ready to battle it out here for the 4th position with Jason Gardner. Down to 0.2 of a second between the two of them. That is the closest battle on the speedway right now. And it does seem like our top 3 pulling away just a little bit here from the field. Of course, Garrett Hess right now has a nearly 4-second lead over the rest of the field. It looks like about 0.2 of a second from Royce back to this battle for the 4th position, side by side for Streets and Gardner. Gardner once again going up high, trying to make the high line work. Streets all the way down to the bottom of the speedway and not able to clear that number 93. It definitely seems like the outside line is the place to be just for the sake of carrying momentum. Like, you can make the lunge down on the bottom, but if you can't clear up, it's kind of hard to make anything work off of it. I say that Gardner has a little bit of a tap against the outside wall, and we are starting to get our full green flag pit cycle underway here. Garrett Hess coming down to pit lane, Daniel Sparks down to pit lane, Michael Sparks down to pit lane, Mark Royce also down on pit lane right now. Looks like that's going to be your 4 takers here this lap. You can see the pit times down on the bottom of the screen here. Jason Gardner now also making the call down to pit lane, and he is almost going to spin it on entry. Amazing work managing to save that truck, because I expected him to be ended up into the pit lane attenuator right there. But he manages to bring it down. Looks like Joe Preacher coming down here as well in that number 5 machine. So that still leaves Kevin Alessia and Derek Murphy as your last 2 drivers that have not made any stops whatsoever right now. Looking around the field at the pit times, pretty standard all the way around. Everyone seems to have had pretty solid pit stops. It's basically all in the 14-second or very low 15-second range for the most part here. But everyone is back out on the speedway, though, so everyone who is still needing to pit is going to be running a bit of an alternate strategy here, deciding not to come down here. John Akins is going to come on down pit lane here. He's currently being scored a lap down. Otherwise, Streets, Murphy, Kluge, Rudolph, and Alessia are all electing to stay out. Of course, we saw Streets and Kluge and Rudolph all come down under the first 2 cautions to try and cram as much fuel into the tanks of those trucks as they could. As we have a driver around on the infield, that is Mark Royce in that Ford Racing number 44. So we lied. Apparently, under his pit stop, his crew managed to actually put the wrap on that 44 machine while we were not looking, because it was definitely not there in practice and qualifying. But Royce probably going to get an unsafe pit penalty for that spin, as we now see Kevin Alessia down on pit lane. John Akins still on pit lane as well. He's been down there for way longer than normal, so Akins might have gotten a penalty or might have gotten some damage we don't know about. Alessia pretty much right on par for the pit stop time here as well, as he makes his way back out onto pit lane. Mark Royce here still running in that 44 machine, and how about we take a quick look back, see if we can't see what made that 44 machine spin. Looks like just loose on corner exit, and all things considered, I think that driver, wow, very lucky that the pit lane wall is not even a foot further out into the asphalt than it was there. Quite the save by that 44 machine. He is now running back in the 9th position here. Derek Murphy going to be the next driver down onto pit lane here. And it looks like should be a standard stop here. So this is the first time Murphy has come down pit lane in that Treehouse Brewing Company number 78. Great to see a livery on that truck. And very pretty looking one at that. Word on the block from Murphy is that he's going to be running Treehouse Brewing Company for the whole season, but every week he might be showing up with a different looking truck for each of the different products that the Treehouse Brewing Company produces here. So expect that 78 to be very multicolored throughout the course here of season number 18. Side-by-side battle going on here for 9th between Michael Sparks and Corey Logan. This is a battle for position between these two drivers right now. Sparks down on the bottom, Logan up high. Corey Logan still has not come to pit lane since lap 12 though, so definitely a tire difference between those two drivers. As best I can tell, everyone in the field that has pitted here under the green flag here for these last probably 5 or 6 laps, they all took tires. So everyone has some fresh Goodyear rubber to run with here. Except those handful of drivers have not come down. Of course, Garrett Street still running, Mark Kluge still running, Rudolph still running. And then Hess is the only driver who has pitted under the green flag that is still on the lead lap. And that's just virtue of how much ground Hess was able to make up in his race lead. So something important to note here, of course, there is bonus points for leading laps. There's also bonus points for leading the most laps. So honestly, just staying out during the pit cycle to try and get a lap led to your name is a valid strategy to pick up a couple bonus points here in the series. Garrett Streets has definitely got them. And once he comes down, unless Mark Kluge follows him down into pit lane, Kluge should probably be picking up a bonus point here as well. About another side-by-side battle for position here, though. Daniel Sparks, Brian Sabelski duking it out for the 5th position here. Just behind is Kevin Alicia, who is currently being scored 2 laps down. So, fortunately, he has been knocked a lap down during the pit cycle. Sabelski seems to just be letting that Ford machine go, though. I mean, he knows he still has 34 laps left to go here in tonight's event. Probably not planning to pit again, if I had to guess. So I'd imagine the game plan here is to try and let the fast guys use up their tires and then make the moves late in the goings of this race. Try and have some more tire at the end left to play with. Of course, should the caution flag fly, that'll definitely mess up a lot of these drivers' strategies right now. And of course, if Streets, Kluge, Rudolph, or Hess don't pit under this caution, which, I mean, Hess wouldn't, we could potentially see the entire field get trapped a lap down here. So definitely a very harrowing situation to be here. Everyone is pretty much just really desperately hoping that Streets, Kluge, and Rudolph will pit before any sort of incident happens. Otherwise, definitely going to be a rough evening for a lot of these drivers. On the track map up here, you can see, well, I just had to say it now, didn't I? I just had to say it, and the caution flag came out just like that. I could be mistaken here. I could be wrong on my interpretation of the rules. But it is to my understanding that if your top 4 drivers that are still here on the lead lap don't come down pit lane, then 5th on back is not going to get waved around the pace car. And since Garrett Hess has already done his stop, as far as I'm aware, the entire rest of the field is about to be trapped 1 lap down, with the exception of Daniel Sparks, who would be the lucky dog. Let's take a moment. Let's look back at this incident here with the 78 machine of Derek Murphy. We'll see what happened to him while in real time these drivers figure out their pacing situation, whether they're on the lead lap or not. And once again, looks like the same fate that we saw for a couple of other drivers here this evening, just getting loose on turn number 4, and that's all it takes to send that truck around. It's right on the entry of 4, where it just always seems to snap out on. And again, another instance of not making any contact with any other trucks, not making contact with the wall. So that is definitely great to see. That truck is still in prime racing condition, but take a look here. I mean, definitely not doing those Goodyear tires any favors. That is for sure. So he gets it spun back around. He has to go outside of pit lane. Of course, pit entry is closed on the initial pace lap. So he would get a penalty if he went down into pit lane there. So he's going to get back up on the field. And it does look like our drivers aren't getting waved around, but it looks like some of them are getting put back on the lead lap here. But sure enough, Joshua Rudolph elected to stay out, and Garrett Hess has elected to stay out here under this caution. Unless I'm mistaken, and pit lane hasn't opened already, but I'm pretty positive that it has. And you do see a couple of drivers in front of Rudolph and Hess, so those drivers should be getting the wave around the pace car here. That being, let's see who's all in there. That looks like Gardner, Sabelski, Mark Royce is in there. Same with Daniel Sparks. No, not Daniel Sparks, excuse me. Derek Murphy's in there. So all these trucks should be getting waved around the pace car, it looks like. We'll just have to see. We'll give it a minute for iRacing Race Control to figure things out here. We line them up 2 by 2 here, so we've gotten the one to go from the flagman, and sure enough, yep, all of those drivers are getting waved around the pace truck here. So that is Mark Royce, Jason Gardner, Kevin Alicia getting waved around here as well. It looks like I saw Sabelski in there as well. So yeah, a couple of drivers all getting the wave around, getting put back on the lead lap here. Once they catch the tail end of the field, we'll have our proper starting order figured out. But it will be Rudolph controlling the field and leading them to green. Garrett Hess starting on the outside, which all things considered, I think Hess is probably happy about that. Hess generally seems to prefer the outside line, so I don't think he has any qualms here about starting in second. Garrett Streets, Mark Kluge, 3rd and 4th, Sparks and Sabelski, 5th and 6th. And it's going to be Gardner and Royce, your final drivers, still on the lead lap. Green flag back up in the air, though, and looks like a little bit of a struggle for the inside line from the green, and I might have been mistaken here. Joshua Rudolph off to an early lead. I fully expected Hess to just pull away here. Rudolph smartly going to go up to the front, but he drops back down. He knows with these old tires he has on that 12 machine, or on that 188 machine, excuse me, he's not going to be able to run the high line the way that these drivers on fresh tires are. So he's just going to run the bottom here. Still going to try and make the strategy play work here, but as we get ready to be 25 to go, not sure if it will be able to work out for him here. How about this battle for the race lead, though, between the two Garretts, Hess and Streets. Streets down on the bottom in the SM Racing Products entry. Hess up on the high line in that Avalon Project number 12. And Garrett Streets will be scored with leading at least one lap here tonight, so that'll be a bonus point to the name of that 15 machine. And considering both these drivers are on new tires, Streets may have a chance to contest here. Not only that, but Streets is actually on 20-lap newer tires over Garrett Hess. Streets pitted under that last caution we just had. So it's going to be a 20-lap difference in tires between Streets and Hess. Kluge back in 3rd also pitted under that caution and also looks like he took tires. So Kluge should be somewhere in the relative speed department as these other drivers. And actually, if we pull up the pit stop box here, you can see just how silly it is for some of these drivers. Mark Kluge, Garrett Streets have both made 5 pit stops here this evening. Every time there's an alternate color, that is a new pit stop. Of course, they're kind of hard to see on Streets and Kluge just because they pitted multiple times in like 1-lap intervals, but still, definitely interesting to see how all of these drivers have stretched their stints out. Garrett Street's going to be your race leader, and he is pulling away to almost a full second lead just like that. Down the inside, Mark Kluge is going to make a pass on that 12 machine here. It looks like maybe not quite able to, but he's certainly getting close to the back bumper of that 12. Still running down to the inside in that 27 machine, side by side for second here. And of course, the more these two drivers duke it out with each other, that is just allowing Garrett Streets to pull up more and more of a lead. Now up to 1.2 seconds here as Kluge Gets the nose ahead here for the time being, but he has not cleared that 12 machine yet. Turns 3 and 4, though. Kluge will be your new second place driver here this evening. Kluge is up +6 from where he qualified, by the way. Right now, he is the hard charger of the evening. Oh, everyone else in the field, with the exception of Garrett Streets, is only up +1. Streets is up +2, then Kluge there with a monumental up +6 from where he qualified here this evening. Definitely a great run so far here for the 27 machine. And of course, last season, Kluge finished in the championship point standings back in... on here somewhere. Back in 6th in the championship point standings with 2 top 5s to his name. So starting the season off with a podium finish could be, again, just an amazing start to the season for this driver. That's always the first race of the season. It's always very exciting. A whole bunch of new stories to tell, clean slates for these drivers, and honestly, the first race sometimes can be what shapes your entire season. How about back here for the 10th position? These 3 drivers are all a lap down. Kevin Alessia, Corey Logan, Derek Murphy, but they are battling for position here on the same lap as each other. Logan down on the inside in that Cedar Robotics number 11. Up to the high side is the 78 of Derek Murphy. Alessia in that 24, pulling away just a little bit here. Starting to settle out this battle just a bit. This is not for the Lucky Dog spot, as right now that goes to Michael Sparks, who has an 8-second gap over all of the other potential Lucky Dog candidates right now. A little bit further up in the field, though, we got Joshua Rudolph, Jason Gardner duking it out. Ryan Zabelski getting involved in this picture here as well, as they battle it out here for the 5th position. Gardner, another driver that's been having a little bit of technical issues here this evening. Driver that normally races in VR said he was having a bunch of VR issues here before the race that might be a season-long problem if he can't figure out a way to get that fixed. I'm not sure if he's racing in VR with it being problematic like it is, or if he's just running on modder here this evening, but regardless, he's running in the 5th position, up +2 from where he qualified here this evening. With a little bit of a bobble there down the front straightaway, that's allowing Rudolph, Zabelski, Mark Royce also involved in this battle, so make this a 4-car battle for 5th, why don't you? Right now, this is the closest battle on the speedway here between these 4 cars, as Zabelski is starting to make moves happen down on the bottom of the speedway here with Rudolph, but not quite able to make it stick. Still 2 by 2 heading down into turns 1 and 2 here. Zabelski drifts up just a little bit, might have to check up a little bit there. Royce right behind, wanted to capitalize on it, probably thought about making it 3 wide, but second guess himself, decided maybe that's not the best play right now. But with 12 laps left to go, these drivers are going to start having to make a little bit more daring moves with each other, because if you don't make the daring move, you might not have the opportunity to make that move ever again. Now 2 by 2 here between Zabelski and Royce, as Rudolph manages to get clear and build a little bit of a gap there. Really not that much of one, but a little bit of a gap nonetheless. And mind you, we're also 11 laps left to go here at this 0.8 mile speedway. Those 11 laps are going to click down very darn quickly here. I mean, we're turning 24-second laps. So make that only about 5 more minutes of green flag racing. Unless somebody has a little bit of an oopsie and brings out the yellow flag again, there's really not all that much time left here in tonight's event. Now Zabelski finds himself at the tail end of this battle. Royce able to get clear. Now Royce is starting to put the pressure down on Joshua Rudolph. Gardner now up a whole 1.6 seconds over this battle, though. So Gardner's kind of checked out. He's just letting these drivers duke it out with each other, so he can build up a little bit more of a gap and try and finish a bit more comfortably in 5th. A little bit of contact there. Bit of a wobble there out of Rudolph. He's going to get bumped to the tail end of this 3-car battle now. That's going to be putting him back in 8th. Still side by side with Sabelski, though. He has certainly not given up in that 188 machine. But I think that little bit of wobble is just all it did to do him in here. Now, all single filed out in this battle, but I have the feeling that this is not the last that we will see out of the scuffle between these three drivers here. Up the front, Garrett Streets leads the field with a nearly 3-second lead over Mark Kluge, and Kluge has 3 seconds himself to play with over Garrett Hess. The thing's gotten mighty spread out up at the front of the field here. And right now, the closest battle on the speedway is this battle between Murphy and Kevin Alessia here for the 10th position, side by side here with 6 to go. Of course, Murphy has been a long-time runner here in the ASRC Oval Series. This, however, is Kevin Alessia's second over start. For all intents and purposes, he is basically a rookie here in the ASRC Oval Series. He managed to make one start at the very tail end of last season in the Mini Stock Series. I believe he finished, I want to say, back in 6th, back at the USA International Speedway dirt layout. So this is his first time running on asphalt here in the ASRC Oval Series. He's up +1 from where he qualified, and being a rookie driver, not only just ASRC, but the league as a whole, I'd say finishing better than where you started is at least a little bit of a mini victory in of itself. And of course, we got drivers of all skill levels here competing in the ASRC Oval Series. Not all of them have winning necessarily as the goal. I mean, of course, everyone wants to win. That's silly to say otherwise, but for a lot of these drivers, there are other smaller goals that they're setting for each other outside of just taking home the race win. So definitely great to see some of these newer drivers develop their skills here in the league, and always great to see the longtime veterans putting on a heck of a show out here. Of course, up at the front, gonna be none other than Mr. Garrett Streets, who looks like he's having a little bit of connection issues here, but that 15 machine nearly went a lap down after a mechanical failure with his ignition switch. He is now leading the field with a 3-second lead with 2 laps left to go here. All he has to do is take that white flag and he should be good to go, but if he doesn't, well, we'll see the yellow flag come out, and we'll rack him back up and go into overtime, but he's heading down in turns 3 and 4 right now, so he should be A-okay here. And coming across the start-finish line, white flag in the air, 1 more lap, 0.8 of a mile for Garrett Streets to bring her on home. He gets around that lap car of John Aikens there. And sure enough, it's going to be Garrett Streets here taking home the first win of season number 18 here of the ASRC Oval Series, running in these trucks. And of course, none other than Garrett Streets of the title sponsor, SM Racing Products. He's going to get it done here. Looks like back in second, we got Mark Kluge, Garrett Hess around the field, out back in third. Sparks and Gardner, your top 5 here this evening. But we'll see Streets bring it around here. I would imagine we're going to see him burn it down here in just a minute when some of these other trucks get down to pit lane. And of course, it's kind of not a surprise because, again, 9 out of the 14 trucks here in tonight's event were Chevys. But sure enough, it's going to be a Chevy taking home the first checkered flag here in season number 18. Coming back from adversity, mechanical failure to race win. What a heck of a run by Garrett Streets here this evening. And he is putting on probably one of the most dramatic burnouts we've seen here yet. I hope he's not planning to go the whole way around the speedway here with that. I don't know if those Goodyears or that engine can take it. Okay, he's going to cut it out now. Not quite destroying the truck. But that said, race fans, we're going to cut the break here for just a moment. Don't go anywhere. We will be back here in just a second with some words with your top 3 finishers. Alrighty, race fans, welcome back to the Iowa Speedway. 100 laps here in the books here tonight. And up here in the booth with me, none other than Mr. Garrett Streets. Going back into the series after a little bit of a hiatus. Had some sporadic appearances here and there in the previous season. But most importantly, he's gone through adversity here tonight. He had a little bit of a mechanical failure, and despite that, he still found a way to take home the checkered flag here tonight. Mr. Garrett Streets, how are you doing here this evening?
Feeling pretty good. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, it feels really good to be back. Took a few weeks off there at the end of last season. Just had a lot of stuff going on and couldn't make it out. So just decided to rest and recuperate a little bit and get ready for this season.
Yeah, definitely quite the triumphant way to make your return here tonight. I guess run me through sort of your thought process here this evening. I mean, I saw you signed up pretty much without any time left to practice at all, so I would assume that with you running as fast as you did, you got some practice going on your own time.
Yeah, I ran, I don't know, maybe 5 or so laps last night, or maybe it was the night before last, I don't know, but wanted to hop in and get a couple laps in and see how it felt. Felt like the track was a lot slicker tonight than what I had practiced on. I think the track temperature at the beginning of the race was around 98 degrees. Um, but I was really shocked to see everyone running the top. I had practiced running on the bottom, and so I just kind of stuck with my plan of running down there, and I felt like that'd be the best opportunity to keep from burning off the right front tire. And we had pretty good speed there in the long run early on, and uh, it would have been really interesting to see how it played out with Garrett. I think he would have been able to catch me. I was planning on trying to make it the whole way. I was able to make it on fuel, uh, but I think it would have been really close there had it all gone green. But with the caution, it just kind of helped me out and fell into my hands with having fresher tires, and we were able to capitalize on that and get the job done.
Fair enough. Certainly, quite the winning strategy you got there. Only practice 5 laps and practice it with the wrong track conditions. I like it. That said, how about run me through the mechanical failure you had here tonight? I know you mentioned there was something going on with the ignition here, so how are y'all able to get that fixed?
Yeah, I the early caution came out and I knew I was about 10 short on fuel, it looked like based on the prediction. So I felt like the best opportunity would be just pack as much fuel in as I could. I felt like had it gone green the whole way, more people would have tried to save fuel. And I'm admittedly not the best at saving fuel. So I felt like my best chance of playing the fuel game was to just pack as much fuel as I could. um, my ignition switch was working. The problem is I was doing some hardware testing before the race tonight, and it changed some of my mappings on my button box, and so my switch didn't work exactly how it normally does. And with it, me thinking that it was going to be a fuel strategy race, I wanted to get it fixed, so I ended up pitting multiple times under those first two cautions to try to get my ignition switch remapped so I could save fuel under cautions and stuff like that. So it wasn't exactly necessary for me to do so, but I felt like while I was already in the back, I might as well get stuff fixed the way I wanted it to be, so that way I could save fuel as best I could with the way I thought the race was going to play out.
Fair enough. It certainly seemed the right call to do it because it got you your first trophy here tonight. Of course, looking at the broader schedule here for this season, it is mostly short track focused, and we're really going to be hammering down on that next week with Martinsville. How are you feeling about your chances for next week and your season as a whole?
Yeah, I feel like I run pretty well at the short tracks. I'm definitely admittedly a mile and a half guy. I love racing the mile and a halfs. That's my favorite kind of thing to watch. That's my favorite kind of thing to race. So those are definitely the ones I have circled, especially my home track, Kansas. Really look forward to going there in these trucks. But yeah, I have had some good runs at Martinsville over the time in ASRC. I think maybe my first win came there back in the late model. So yeah, I look forward to heading on over to Martinsville and see if we can get a grandfather clock next week.
Good deal. I'm definitely excited to see how things go for you. But of course, before I let you go celebrate taking home your first trophy of the evening, or of the season, better said, here tonight, the microphone is all yours, Mr. Streets. Who you want to thank for making everything happen?
Yeah, first and foremost, I want to thank Jason for putting everything together. He does a great job as always with putting together the schedule and doing all the stuff with ASRC. I want to thank you for helping out with the admin side and putting together a great broadcast every week. It's a ton of fun to watch it, and I was admittedly listening in as we were racing tonight. I want to thank all the people that came out tonight. We had a pretty good field, a lot of new faces. I hope that they continue to stick around and come back week after week. It's great to have a good group of guys to race with every season. And I want to give a shout out and thanks to everyone who supports us at SM Racing Products. If you're in the market for any sim racing hardware, we'd appreciate you giving us a look at sm-racingproducts.com.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out here tonight. Congratulations on the checkered flag to your name, and I look forward to seeing you next week at Martinsville.
Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you there. I think we're going to head east to Iowa 80 Truck Stop. It's the largest truck stop in North America. So we're going to see you there, Aiden, right?
Yeah, I'm sure I'll be there. I know where that is.
All right, sounds good. Catch you later, Aiden. Have a good one.
And finishing back here in position number 2, our hard charger of the evening, up plus 6 spots from where he qualified. It's going to be Mark Kluge bringing it home, position number 2. Mark, how are you feeling here tonight?
I'm feeling pretty good. Was going for the long run, but then that caution came out and had some fresh tires and got a battle with the Garretts for a little while, and then Garrett Streets took off from me.
Sure enough, when y'all took the green there after that last caution, y'all seemed pretty equally matched, but I guess just not quite able to hang on to it there, but still a second place finish and managing to get a leg up over Garrett Hess, who just absolutely swept all of last season, is a feat in of itself here.
Yeah, he was dominant last season, but and I honestly had a pretty hard season last with those um mini stocks. They didn't suit my driving style, so getting back with some of the higher horsepower felt good to be back.
Good deal. I mean, coming into tonight's event and as the season as a whole, do you feel like you're going to have better odds here in these trucks as just like a general performance?
Yeah, I think long runs with this extra horsepower is going to play into kind of my driving style. So I think it should be a fun season to go through.
For sure. I'm definitely excited to see what everyone's able to do here for this season. Of course, next week, doing a little bit of short tracking over at Martinsville. Do you think you'll be able to put on another podium finish like that here?
I think it depends on how much practice I get in and how much beating banging happens. Maybe you get lucky and have a caution fall my way again. So we'll see.
Sure enough. I mean, a track like Martinsville, I feel like a little bit of beaten banging's definitely to be expected. So it should definitely be a fun race. But of course, for tonight, I won't keep you here all evening, especially if you want to get practice in for Martinsville next week. So the microphone is all yours, Mr. Kluge. Who you want to thank for making everything happen here tonight?
First, I'd like to thank you and Jason for putting all this events on and doing the broadcast. SM Racing Products for sponsoring the series. I'd like to thank my teammates and then my sponsor, Cheesy Bites, and then all my friends and family that support me.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out here tonight. Congratulations on the podium to your name, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Yep, see you next week.
And finishing back in position number 3, champion driver of season number 17, Mr. Garrett Hess. We switched to a different car and somehow you didn't win. What happened?
Well, I mean, I won the Iowa 70. I just the caution didn't go my way. That's basically what happened. That's why I'm not in P1. Just the cautions didn't go my way.
Fair enough. I mean, there's always a little bit of chaos to racing that can throw off even the best laid plans. You ran really well here tonight. I'm willing to bet you probably got the bonus points for leading the most laps here this evening. I don't actually have any tracker on that, but it seemed like you were at the front for a pretty solid amount of tonight's event.
Yeah. I I was the fastest car when everyone was on the same set of tires, uh, and it was just I was going to catch Garrett Streets, um, if that caution didn't come out, uh, because I was running about 7/10 of a second quicker every lap, so I would have caught up to his bumper again. Um, but yeah, it was just I got up front early, ran my line, was being smooth, and then Brian Pitt, I wanted to see just how far ahead he'd get. And he got about 3 seconds ahead of me before I decided to dive in. Came out right behind him, then passed him, and uh, and then was just hunting down the leaders, and then the caution came out, and that allowed Mark Luge and Garrett Streets to get new tires and just run away from me. I mean, they were running 0.3 of a second faster than I was just because of the tire difference.
Fair enough. Definitely a little bit of unfortunate strategy playing out there, but that's just how it goes sometimes. Of course, I know you mostly as a short track guy. Next week, we're short tracking the hell out of it. So do you think that's going to be a track where going to be really up in the contention for it?
Depends. Martinsville is either a track that I'm really good at or I have the most embarrassing performance of my life. Um, if I can, if I can just stay on the inside and be smooth with throttle on at Martinsville, and we don't get too many cautions, I think that I have a pretty decent shot of at least having another interview with you.
Seems like a pretty solid plan then. Of course, I know you said that you're probably going to be running part-time here this season. So, what sort of goals do you generally have set out for yourself for your performance here when you can show up?
When the races that I show up to, I mean, some of the tracks on the schedule, like Gateway, Bristol, uh, I'd even say Rockingham and Nashville, just tracks I don't really vibe with too much. Not tracks that I enjoy too much. And the truck is just a car that I'm pretty ambivalent on. I'm driving it because it's ASRC and I like driving with these people, but it's not by any means my favorite car to drive. So it really just depends on how I'm feeling the night of.
Fair enough. I'm definitely excited to see what things manage to play out for you when you are able to show up. And who knows, we might just have you up here in the broadcast booth with me for some of these races.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be good. It'd be good practice before I start broadcasting SRL again. So I wouldn't mind doing it with you.
Fair enough. Well, we'll just have to see what the future holds. But for tonight, you're walking away with a podium finish here to your name. The microphone is all yours, Mr. Hess. So who you want to thank for making it happen?
Yeah, I want to thank everyone at Team Watson Racing. Great group of guys are there. If you want setups for pretty much any iRacing oval car, teamwatsonracingsetups.com. Want to thank the friendly schizophrenics at Project Avalon forums. Project Avalon, connecting the human mind through science and spirituality. Pretty wacky and wild place over there. Find out about ancient aliens if you want to. And besides that, just want to thank you and Jason for putting on the show, putting on the broadcast. The whole shebang. And I'm looking forward to next week.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out here tonight. Congratulations on getting a podium to your name. And I look forward to seeing what you're able to do over at Martinsville.
Yes, sir. See you then.
You heard it here first, race fans. Your top three finishers here this evening: Garrett Streets, Mark Kluge, and Garrett Hess. Your podium here tonight. But sure enough, those weren't the only drivers here in the field here this evening. So how about we take a look down at our unofficial race results, see how the rest of our drivers did here tonight, at least unofficial. Of course, there is always the option or potential of post-race penalties, but I really don't think that any would happen. They're very rare and infrequent to happen here in the ASRC Oval Series, but technically speaking, it is still an option, so that's always something you have to keep in mind. Of course, we just spoke to Garrett Streets, Mark Kluge, and Garrett Hess, both of the league's Garretts finding themselves on the podium. But how about back and forth? Daniel Sparks, a very solid start to his season in that number 4 machine. Then back in 5th, that number 93, that's Mr. League admin Jason Gardner, rounded out your top 5 here. Then back in 6th, Mark Royce coming back from that spin he had during the mid of the race. He's going to bring it home on 6. Then it's going to be Brian Zabelski in that 85, back in 7th with Joshua Rudolph in the 188 entry. Round out the tail end of the drivers here on the lead lap back in 8th. Then in 9th, we had the 42 of Michael Sparks back there with the 78 of Derek Murphy rounding out the top 10. Then we had rookie driver Kevin Alessia in the 24 back in 11th. Corey Logan for CZ Motorsports in the 11 back in 12th. Then those two other rookie drivers, Joe Peacher and John Akins, rounding out 13th and 14th for the tail end of the field here this evening. That said, that's just about all we've got here from the Iowa Speedway. Definitely a very electric start here to season number 18. And that just goes to show what all sorts of excitement we got coming up here for the remainder of this season. It is bound to be a fun one. And of course, same day, same time next week at the Martinsville Speedway for round number 2 for a little bit of short tracking here in these NASCAR trucks. For now, though, thank you all for tuning in here tonight, and I look forward to seeing y'all next